I've been a judge for 18 years. I've sentenced people to prison. I've taken children away from parents. I've made decisions that changed lives forever. But there's one case I still think about every single day. Not because of what I decided, because of what I almost decided. It was a Tuesday morning in June. Hot. The kind of heat that makes people irritable before they even walk through the door. My courtroom was packed. Standing room only. That should have been my first sign that something was different. Most family court hearings are quiet, private. But this one had drawn a crowd. I didn't know why yet. The case was a custody battle. Mother versus father. The mother was asking for full custody and a restraining order. The father was fighting to keep any access to his daughter at all. On paper, it looked straightforward. The mother had documentation, photos, medical records, a police report. The father had nothing but his word. I remember looking at him when he walked in. He was thin, tired, the kind of tired that lives in your bones. His suit didn't fit right, like he borrowed it or lost weight since he bought it. He didn't make eye contact with anyone, just sat down next to a public defender who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. The mother sat across the aisle with her attorney. Expensive suit, confident posture. She had family with her. Her parents, her sister. They all looked at the father like he was something they'd scraped off their shoe. I don't tell these stories often. Most of what happens in my courtroom stays there. But if you stay with me, you'll understand why this one is different. Why it has to be told. The mother's attorney went first. She was good, very good. She painted a picture of a man who was violent, unstable, dangerous. She submitted photos of bruises on the mother's arms. A black eye. She had the police report from a domestic disturbance call 6 months earlier. She had a letter from the mother's therapist describing emotional abuse and control. She even had testimony from a neighbor who claimed to have heard shouting and things breaking. I watched the father while she spoke. He just sat there, staring at the table, not reacting, not defending himself. His lawyer objected twice, but weakly. She didn't have much to work with. Then the mother took the stand. She was composed, articulate. She described years of living in fear, of being told she was worthless, of being grabbed, pushed, cornered. She cried, but not too much, just enough. She said she was terrified of what he might do if he had access to their daughter, that she'd already seen him grab the child's arm too hard, that their daughter had started having nightmares. I've heard thousands of testimonies. You develop an instinct for truth, and everything she said sounded true. When it was the father's turn, his lawyer asked if he wanted to testify. He nodded, stood up slowly, walked to the stand like a man walking to his own execution. His voice was quiet. So quiet the court reporter had to ask him twice to speak up. He said he'd never hit his wife, never hit his daughter. He said the bruises were from something else, but he couldn't prove it. He said the police report was filed after an argument, but no one was arrested, no charges were filed. He said his daughter was his whole world, and losing her would kill him. His lawyer asked him about the neighbor's testimony. He said the neighbor was the mother's best friend. Of course, she would say what the mother wanted her to say. The mother's attorney tore him apart on cross-examination. She asked why he couldn't prove where the bruises came from, why he had no witnesses of his own, why his own lawyer seemed barely prepared. Why, if he was such a good father? His daughter's teacher had noted behavioral problems in her school file. He had no good answers. Just kept saying it wasn't true. It wasn't him. Please don't take his daughter. I've seen guilty people lie with more conviction. When the testimony ended, I called a 15-minute recess. I went to my chambers, sat at my desk. The evidence was clear. The mother had everything. The father had nothing. In family court, we err on the side of caution. We protect the child first. If there's even a possibility of danger, we remove it. I was going to rule for the mother. Full custody. Supervised visitation only for the father. Maybe not even that. It was the right call. The only call. But something bothered me. I couldn't put my finger on it at first. It was just a feeling. A tiny splinter of doubt. The father's face when his daughter was mentioned. The way the mother's family all stared at him with the exact same expression. The way the mother's attorney had been just a little too prepared, a little too smooth. I did something I almost never do. I asked my clerk to pull the full court file, not just the current case. Everything. Divorce records, previous motions, financial documents. And that's when I saw it. The divorce had been filed 8 months earlier. The father had filed it, not the mother. He'd filed for divorce and asked for joint custody. Standard, uncontested. Then, 2 weeks later, the mother filed a counter motion. Full custody. Allegations of abuse. And the allegations started the same week the father had filed a separate motion about the couple's business. They'd co-owned a small company, worth about $2 million. The father's motion claimed the mother had been moving assets, hiding money. He wanted a forensic audit. The mother's abuse allegations came 3 days after that motion was filed. I sat there staring at the timeline. It could be coincidence. Abusers do threaten financial retaliation. Victims do wait until they feel safe to come forward. But the timing was perfect. Too perfect. I went back into the courtroom. Everyone stood. I sat down. I looked at both parties for a long moment. Then I did something I rarely do. I asked the mother a question directly. I asked her when the abuse started. She said it had been going on for years, since before their daughter was born. I asked her if she'd ever reported it before. She said no. She'd been too afraid. I asked her if she'd ever told anyone, a doctor, a friend, a family member. She hesitated, then said she'd told her sister 2 years ago. I asked the sister to stand. I asked her under oath if the mother had told her about abuse 2 years ago. The sister said yes. Absolutely. I asked her if she'd done anything to help. She said she'd offered support, but the mother wasn't ready to leave yet. I asked her if she'd encouraged her sister to document anything, take photos, keep records. She said she had. I asked the mother why. If her sister had encouraged her to document abuse 2 years ago, all of her evidence was from the last 6 months. The courtroom went silent. The mother said she'd been too scared before, that it had gotten worse recently. I asked her if it had gotten worse before or after her husband filed for divorce. Her attorney objected. Relevance. I overruled. The mother said she couldn't remember exactly. I told her the divorce was filed on March 3rd. I asked her when the abuse escalated. She said, maybe late March. I showed her the date of her first police report, April 7th, 5 weeks after he filed for divorce, 1 week after he filed for financial audit. If you've ever been in a position where you had power over someone's life, you know what I'm talking about right now. That moment when you realize you almost made a catastrophic mistake. When you realize the truth isn't where you thought it was. I called another recess. This time I made calls. I contacted the police department myself. Spoke to the officer who responded to the domestic disturbance. He told me both parties were calm when he arrived. No visible injuries. No property damage. The mother had called. The father had been cooperative. The officer's note said it appeared to be a verbal argument during a separation. He'd filed a report because policy required it, but he hadn't felt intervention was necessary. I called the daughter's school. Spoke to the teacher who'd noted behavioral problems. She told me the problems had started after the parents separated. The daughter was anxious, withdrawn, but when asked if she felt unsafe with either parent, the child had said no. She just wanted them to stop fighting. I called the mother's therapist. She couldn't share details without a subpoena, but I asked her one question. Had she ever personally observed signs of abuse, or was she reporting what the mother had told her? There was a pause. She said she was reporting what her client had disclosed. I went back to the courtroom. It was late afternoon now. Everyone looked exhausted. I asked the father one more question. I asked him if he had any proof at all that he was telling the truth. He looked at me, really looked at me, and he said no. He had no proof, just his word. And he knew his word wasn't worth anything anymore. Then he said something I'll never forget. He said, "Your Honor, if you think there's even a chance I hurt my daughter, take her away from me. I'd rather lose her than risk her being hurt. But I'm telling you the truth. And one day, that truth will come out. I just hope it's not too late." I made my ruling. I denied the restraining order. I ordered joint custody with a 60-40 split favoring the mother. I ordered the forensic audit of the business to proceed. And I ordered a court-appointed psychologist to evaluate both parents and the child over the next 3 months. The mother's side of the courtroom erupted. Her attorney demanded an immediate appeal. Her family shouted that I was endangering a child, that I was a disgrace. The father just put his head in his hands and cried. 3 months later, the psychologist's report came back. The child showed no signs of trauma related to her father. She was happy and comfortable during their visits. She showed significant anxiety related to her mother's questioning about those visits. 5 months later, the forensic audit was complete. The mother had moved over $400,000 into hidden accounts. She'd been preparing to leave the marriage and take everything. 7 months later, the mother's best friend, the neighbor who testified, came forward. She said the mother had asked her to lie, had coached her on what to say. She said she felt guilty ever since. The mother's case fell apart. The father got primary custody. The mother got supervised visitation while she underwent counseling. But here's what keeps me up at night. I almost didn't look deeper. I almost ruled based on the evidence in front of me. I almost took a father away from his daughter because a mother was willing to destroy him to get what she wanted. And I think about how many times I didn't look deeper. How many times I ruled based on what was presented. How many times I was certain I was right. I've been doing this for 18 years. I'm good at my job. I'm fair. I'm thorough. But I'm also human. And humans make mistakes. There's no appeals process for the cases I got wrong before I learned to look harder. Before I learned that the truth isn't always where the evidence points. I still see that father sometimes. He brings his daughter to community events. She's happy, healthy. She calls him daddy and holds his hand. He's never thanked me, never even acknowledged what I did. I think he knows the same thing I know. I didn't save him. I almost destroyed him. Here's what I want you to think about, and maybe you can tell me in the comments if I'm wrong. If someone comes into your life with all the right evidence, all the right words, all the right witnesses, does that make them right? Or does it just make them prepared? If this story made you think twice about anything you were certain of, share it with someone who still believes the system always works. Maybe they need to hear it too. I'm still a judge. I still make these decisions every day. But now, every time I'm certain I know the truth, I remember that Tuesday in June. And I look one more time, just in case.